Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nothing Exempt. I am Brian Piotr. I'm here with my co-host Nicholas Pardini for another installment of our island series. Today is a very special island that you probably haven't heard of, but you should definitely read up and maybe go to this place because it's a really unique island in the world in Northern Europe, southeast of Sweden, and it's only got 58,000 people that live in it in the Baltic Sea. It's called the island of Gotland. So this island is about 100 miles long by 30 miles wide. You can get there with a 45-minute flight from Stockholm. Summers are highs in the 70s and lows in the 50s. Winters are actually very narrow, with the average high in January at 34 and the average low at 27 in Fahrenheit. So that's not very much variation in the winter, and it's actually pretty crazy.
It's
You can
considerably
get
more mild than mainland Scandinavia.
considerably more mild than mainland Scandinavia. And as far as precipitation, on average, it's 20 inches a year, which is not that much. It's pretty average for a pretty temperate. You can grow a lot of things there. Nick, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you would get there and things like that?
Yeah, the main city is the capital city of Visby, which has about 40% of the population of the island. And that's how you'd fly in through Visby International Airport. There's about 450,000 people every year go there, 430,000 from Sweden, and then another 17,000 from other parts of Europe, and less than 3,000 people come from off Europe. So if you want to go to a place where you don't see a lot of other people from America, this might be the place for you to go. And the airports you'd get there for, mostly within Sweden, Stockholm, Gothenburg, etc. But you could also get there from Copenhagen in Denmark, Oslo in Norway, Helsinki in Finland, and they have seasonal flights to the island of our last show, Majorca.
Yeah, and if to put this in perspective, this is a fairly large island near dense populations of Europe in the Baltic Sea, and yet is sparsely populated. So it's not some place that most people are likely to go to if you're going on a European tour. So if you're being a tripster and you want to go spend a weekend out and feel like you're on a remote island, but really be fairly close to the rest of Europe, this is a perfect destination.
Yeah, we'll get more into what to do in the things to do section. So, Brian, tell us more about like the history of the island.
Well, this island has a long history that includes medieval history and probably Neolithic history. But going back in time, it was part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It went through various different ownerships: the Victor brothers, Teutonic Order, Kalmar Union. The 1300s was a fairly it was fought over quite a bit until it became part of Denmark from 1523 to 1645. It finally got over a century before it got fought over again. After that, it moved back over to Sweden, which became a country, or which had become a country, and now owned the land. So Gotland had it, sorry, I'm having trouble speaking today, but anyways, the Swedish had it from 1645 to 1676, then back to Denmark for 3 years, from 1676 to 1679, and then Sweden from 1679 to 1808, with a very brief moment in time being under the Russian Empire in the year 1808, and then ever since it's been Swedish. So it's been a diocese of the Catholic Church for almost 1,000 years, but it's crossed over from one dominion to the other quite a few times over that time period. And because of that, you can actually go see ruins of many different churches. If you go to Visby, there's like a dozen different ruins and old churches that you can visit. Like one of the large ruins of an old church is one of the big sky part of the skyline of Visby. If you were to go visit,
Yeah, in terms of the culture and demographics, it's about 58,000 people. It's mostly Swedish ethnically, and it's also predominantly that's the language they speak there, and in along with English, which is very commonly spoken across Scandinavia. So language barrier probably will not be a problem on on this trip. And then on top of that, religion wise, Sweden historically, since the Reformation, has been Lutheran, but it's culturally pretty secular along with the rest of Northern Europe. And in terms of notable uh, food, I mean, they have wild garlic and truffles and asparagus. Um, and they have a lot of different flavored meats. Brian could go more into the food if you'd like to say more on Gotland food, how it's different from Swedish food.
now the one other thing I saw when I was reading about it was how the the various herbs that grow wild there have made the meat on the island of Gotland taste different. Like it's got a deeper red to it, a darker color because it's not just the meat there. The sheep and the cows aren't just eating grass. Uh, but other than that, there's a lot of bread. If you look at restaurants on the island, there are a lot of bakeries. You can get pretzels there, and then tons of different kinds of bread. So it looks like a very uh, German Swedish type place for food. And if you're into that type of thing, it'd be awesome. So moving on, Nick, what would you do if you visited?
Yeah, I mean the one actually other cool cultural quirk I want to mention is they participate in something called the Island Games, which is this international competition between a lot of European islands across the world where they compete in an Olympic style competition. It includes Gotland and other islands we've talked about previously on the show, such as the Cayman Islands, Greenland, and those are the ones I talked about on the previous show. But other ones include Saint Helena, Isle of Man, Isle of Wight, Jersey, Minorca, Orkney, and even Gibraltar, even though that's technically not an island, and Bermuda, which we'll probably do a future show on. So yeah, like it looks like all these little islands like to compete against each other in island international competition. So this is one of the places where they host the island games.
Yeah, well, that sounds like a perfect place for our podcast. They should ask us to be an MC.
Yeah, just like
And if you're going there, there are a lot of cruise ships that call on Visby, and you could spend a day there easy. It but like we said, that might not be the most enjoyable. Um, for the tripster in mind, you might want to go fly there and go find a way to go see it yourself. I think cruises are great, but I think the point of a cruise is, or the best parts of a cruise are the part where you're on the boat. So if you actually want to see an island, it's like an afternoon when a port of call. It can be nice, but if you actually want to see it, you should probably go visit it separately.
oh yeah, in terms of things to do, I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of ruins of churches if you're into medieval history. They also have some pagan ruins and monuments from prior to Christianization of the island. Uh, it supposedly also has a nice place to go on like a scenic like drive along the coast, and there's a few art museums.
Yeah, and they have this natural feature spelled Rauks, and what it is uh, stone has been eroded by the sea to make these tall columns of denser limestone or granite on the beach that are 4 or 5 meters tall, and they look like giant columns without a roof. And these are natural creations by the ocean, so they're actually pretty unique little thing to go visit and see for yourself. And that's on the island, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then The other thing that's notable, which we'll get to, there's two events that they have um, once a week in beginning of August. They have an event called Medieval Week, where basically the entire island dresses up in medieval clothes and this turns a lot of the towns into giant Renaissance fairs, and you have medieval markets and a jousting tournament. And it's mainly concentrated in Visby, but they have events throughout the entire island, and they've been doing it for 20 since 1983. And then the other event, which is going to be related to Brian's next topic, is the Politician Week, which takes place at a large park in Visby, where every Swedish parliamentary politician comes to Gotland to present their political views to the public. So, Brian, what are the politics like?
Oh, I don't think that it's worth covering on a summary level. It's not very different to the country of Sweden. There's no special administrative rules, but I'm sure the like the right versus left analysis can be made, but I'd prefer not to do that on the show since we don't live there. And in terms of the economy, it's very agrarian. There's only a little bit of an industry and some vineyards. It's actually you can find the most northernmost vineyard and winery in the world in Gotland. So it's actually a fairly mild climate for its latitude.
That might be the most fun fact of this show for listeners.
Yeah, so go visit the island. Go see the most northern winery ever. I wonder what the wine's like. If it's the most northern wine,
I never heard anybody say, "I want a Swedish wine."
Well, that's because it's so good. It doesn't make it off the island, Nick.
I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I don't know that either. I don't know that to be true. Well, the island's mascot, or I don't know what you call it, but the island's animal is the hedgehog, which is strange. I don't know why. I can't find the reason why. So if you know the reason why, please reach out to us and tell us, because I want to know the answer to that. How did it get the hedgehog? And I would guess that it should be sheep, because that seems to be the most prevalent animal on the island.
Yeah, and their flag looks just like Sweden's, but it's different color scheme. Instead of the blue and yellow for the cross formation, the Scandinavian cross, it's yellow and green, where the background is yellow and the cross is green.
Okay, and as far as other things to do, did we cover everything that there is to say about this island, Nick? And if so, are we done?
Well, we have to say the final question we always ask. Would you visit?
Of course I would visit, Nick. Would there be any reason why you wouldn't visit?
Because there's a lot of other places to go.
Yeah, but on its own, isolated by itself, I absolutely would visit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I'm a little bit less committal on that one. I mean, I've been to Sweden before. I had a good time when I went. I think it was in Stockholm. I don't really have any desire to go back to Scandinavia for a while. Maybe to check out Denmark, because I haven't really seen that country yet. But yeah, I mean, if I was going on a world tour to cover all the islands, I would stop here. But it's not a top priority destination for me.
This is a unique place on Earth to be a part of the EU sphere and have Russia close by and have all these things of the modern world nearby, and yet be on a fairly low density population island. Those people must have very unique perspectives on the world. Like, if you're a farmer on Gotland and you hear news about Brexit or Trump or coronavirus, how affected do you think, how affected do you feel by the news? Like, how disconnected are you, and what's it like living on that island? I'd love to have someone on and ask them those questions.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really worried about coronavirus, that might be the best place to go.
Well, all those cruise ships that dock there, like 250 a year, I imagine those are all carried in summer, but I have a feeling that coronavirus directly will affect all cruise ship lines globally if it keeps going, especially because of the headlines of people being stuck on ships. So even though it's in Northern Europe, it might directly affect that island. I'd love to ask those questions to someone who lives there.
All right. Well, that concludes my thoughts on this island. If you have any questions, you can contact us on our Reddit. It's Nothing Exempt, or our Twitter at Nothing Exempt.
Hey, thanks, guys. I appreciate you listening. We spent some time today going through our sound levels and trying to make this the best possible product for you to listen to. So if you got all the way to the end, I'd love your feedback to continue to evolve and produce this show in a way that is enjoyable for you, the listener. And if you have other suggestions for us, including other islands or things that we missed on this island, reach out to us, like Nick said, or leave us a comment on YouTube or a comment on iTunes. We'll read them all. So thank you, and until next time.